for anybody who might not want to be recorded, unfortunately will have to drop out. I hope nobody will. So my name is Miriam Eisenman. I'm one of your hosts today of this session. I work for Energy Cities, which is the European learning platform for cities, for future-proof cities, as we say, and we're part of one research project funded by the Horizon 2020 program, which is called Well-Based. So it's a project which looks into exactly this topic. What are the impacts of energy poverty on health? We have a team which is quite diverse, and especially we have 6 pilot cities and academic and non-profit partners who will work together, go to like vulnerable households and do quantitative and qualitative surveys to see how this issue has an impact on the people's everyday life, and to in the end draw some conclusions on how policy measures and others can improve the situation. So we will also talk about how those interventions look like and what the challenges are in the second part of this session. And I'm today with 2 co-moderators because we have 3 parts. So one is Vasilis Voulgarakis and Jaideep Visave. They are both representing the Urbanome project, which is also on health and well-being, and which is more about how to bring health as a cross-cutting topic into urban policies. It's also a Horizon 2020 funded project. And in fact, the major aim is on how to achieve greater livability in our cities. So we will hear more about this project and the solutions they are working on in one of the panels. But first, let me just start with a little. So as I said, we will have three parts. I will just show this slide. One part which is on like setting the scene, how unhealthy is energy poverty, with 2 amazing experts that I will introduce afterwards. The second part is more around the data gap and how to get healthy data. And the third part will be more optimistic, looking into the potential solutions. And before we start this, we wanted actually to get a better understanding of who's in the room. So what we did is we prepared a little Mentimeter. It's just 2 questions really, but it's just to get an idea of who's there and what is your level of like expertise on the field. So my colleague will have put the link in the chat as well to the Mentimeter. So either you scan the QR code with your smartphone, or you just click on this Mentimeter link. I will switch to Mentimeter now. I'm feeling like a DJ, so that we can all see the replies. So for the first question on kind of what type of organization or type of job function you're representing today, it's quite interesting. It's quite a majority of researchers actually, a bit of like the private sector, and then NGOs, regional administration. We're still having additional answers coming in. The research part is growing, so that's really interesting. It's probably also, of course, linked to the like the origin of this workshop, which comes from those 2 projects which are more research focused. Okay, that's really interesting. Now to the second question. It's a question on where your knowledge on those 2 topics are actually. Today we're going to focus on 2 topics: energy poverty and urban health. So we just wanted to see where you would rank your knowledge. So if it's more to the left side, then it means you're just discovering the topic, or you're already very kind of learning still. And the more you put it to the right, the more you would say it's your expertise and you're already familiar with it, and you're probably then more the one who can share than learn. So energy poverty is definitely a bit more on the right side. So there are more people whose expertise it is. Urban health a bit less. That's interesting. So I think people will. It's quite a good mix. So I guess people will learn still on both topics. It's good that we don't have just experts. That would have been boring. So okay, great to see this. So now I would say that we immediately move really into the topic. That's why we're here. So we've invited well, a number of speakers who really have great experience from different fields, and that's also what will make the discussions interesting. For the first part, so we have first of all João Pedro Gouveia. So I will just put the right slide again. Sorry. Just a second. So Pedro, who represents a number of organizations, actually. João, sorry, João, who's an environmental engineer with a PhD in climate change and sustainable development policies, focused on sustainable energy systems. And João is from the Nova School of Science and Technology of Nova University Lisbon, Portugal. So he has also good understanding of how energy poverty looks like in Portugal, but not only. He's an invited auxiliary research and project manager at the Center for Environmental and Sustainability Research called SENSE, and he is part of the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub and the Well-Based Expert Advisory Board. And I guess you know, especially the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub. If not, I welcome you to invite you to go on the website. So that's quite an impressive number of functions, and I guess that means that you can look into the topic from a different angles. So I would say it's over to you, João. Let's start with your first presentation for our first insights on the topic. If you could just share your screen and start, that would be amazing.
Good morning, everybody. You need to stop sharing your screen.
I will do so. Yeah.
Thank you. So, good morning. Nice to see a lot of different people here. Today, I'll be fast going about exploring the links between energy poverty and health. I would like to start my presentation with setting the scene on framing these two major topics on four of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So specifically, the first one of no poverty, the third, good health and well-being, the seventh around solutions around energy poverty, so more energy efficiency or integration of renewable energy. And then, of course, all this settled into sustainable cities and communities on the 11th SDG. So for the ones who don't know what's energy poverty, in fact, at the EU level, there is no legal definition of energy poverty, but there are different views, but people kind of agree on this energy poverty definition or similar to this. So what's energy poverty is when individuals or households are not able to adequately heat, cool, or provide other required energy services in their homes at affordable costs. And this is caused by a combination of low incomes, high energy prices, or inefficient buildings or equipments. So when we look to energy poverty in the European context, that allows us to understand that this is really a multidimensional problem with different spheres of causes and impacts. But it is estimated that between 34 to over 100 million Europeans are currently experiencing some component of energy poverty. Either they cannot heat or cool their homes, or they have arrears in their payment of their energy bills, which results in disconnections in a lot of countries. They have very high energy expenditures, or they are living in really problematic dwellings. So living in houses with problems of humidity, mold, and other situations. So of course, this is a growing concern in a lot of member states, if not most, that because of the increased energy prices that we have seen also before the war, but now we have a bigger problem. the 2 years of confinement, remote working. So people kind of understood that their houses were even worse than they thought. So there is an urgent need to solve this problem and address it at the European level, but also at member states and regional, with a regional focus. So for the ones who are not familiar, just this figure on it's a study from OpenX from 2019, which kind of brings together 4 relevant indicators of energy poverty, just to show you that there is a clear divide between North and Western European countries, but also the Southern and Eastern. So Portugal, for example, it's as bad as some Eastern European countries on domestic energy poverty. So under the scope of acting and supporting policies and action on energy poverty, the EPA, so the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, which I'm part of the coordination team, have developed last year a lot of different tools that you can have a look, and you have the website here and the link directly to the information, so you can get access to the report on inspirational cases around Europe. You can have you can check our atlas with over 300 projects on energy poverty at local scale, and we also have started building an introductory course on energy poverty. So what I want to say here around the links to health. So there are a lot of health problems linked to energy poverty. So respiratory diseases, heart attacks, strokes, and mental disorders. We also see that because of the multidimensionality of energy poverty, this requires really not only a comprehensive analysis and diagnosis around different, let's say, departments and ministries in our countries. So environment, political, social, financial, and regulatory assessments. It's a complex topic. And I would say that energy poverty measures or directly links to energy efficiency improvements in our homes. So that's a key part of the solution here that maybe people will talk later, but I would like to highlight it at this point. So when we look into some numbers here, just to set the scene. So we see that, for example, exposure, this study from the World Health Organization from 2021, it shows what was the situation in 2010, in 2030, might be in 2030 and 2050. So exposure to smoke from cooking fires, for example, causes a lot of early deaths, so particulate matter related. We also see a lot of problems of indoor air pollution. It's one of the leading causes also of disease and premature death in the developing world. So this is linked with a lot of use of biomass, for example, which I would like to highlight here. It's not only a health problem, of course, related to energy poverty, but it's one of them, the high use of fireplaces in bad shape. So inefficient equipment that result in a lot of problematic situations. And one of them, and I'll show you here, you cannot understand, it's in Portuguese, but I collected information from newspapers. So back in 2017, so it kind of each year we have 2, 3, 4 news of elderly people either dying burned in their house because because of carbon monoxide. So it's both. It's burned on the open fireplace. They are weak, feeble, and they kind of fall into the fireplace, or other related situations of the use of fireplaces in Portuguese homes. But this is an example. I would say in a lot of countries we see this situation. So to wrap up my short presentation, I would say that looking ahead into health and energy poverty, health improvements and energy poverty reduction, we should look into the decarbonization trade-offs that should be better explored. So we are ongoing a deep energy transition. We need deep decarbonization strategies. So looking, for example, for biomass use, being replaced by other technologies. So there are advantages and disadvantages, but we need to understand if, for example, replacing all fireplaces by heat pumps, which is a really cost-effective measure, is that the solution for the long-term decarbonization? It applies to whole houses, small houses, or the cost. So it was an open question for later discussion potentially. My final messages are just to say that energy efficiency in buildings, in my perspective, is the most sustainable and suitable tool to improve air quality not only indoor, but also in the urban environments. When we look to, we should, for example, see the energy performance certification of buildings as a tool to integrate this knowledge on indoor air quality, thermal comfort, or daylight indicators, for example, not only thinking about the energy consumption. And then there are a lot of co-benefits of a healthy indoor environment, of course, that people will talk for sure later. So we should maximize the climate and health benefits of the energy transition, making sure policymakers also understand the additional advantages, for example, of investing in renewable energy and energy efficiency with positive externalities around health and well-being of our inhabitants and cities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joao. That was really a fast but super dense presentation on where we stand, especially on household air pollution. I think that's a topic that is not often enough discussed, and it's really nice that you touched upon the problem as such, but also pinpointed already some of the solutions. So hopefully this can trigger the discussion for the third part. I also think what is quite interesting on one of your slides, it says there is an estimate of 34 to 100 million Europeans suffering from energy poverty, which is a super broad range of figures. And I think it's also significant for the data gap that we still have on the topic, considering that definitions are not clear and that member states do not identify energy poor people in the same way. I think that will also lead us to the data session later on. So thanks for this, Joao. Now I would pass the floor to William. William Baker, who has been working a lot on fuel poverty policies, both in the City Council environment, but also at the new National Consumer Council. He now works with Catapult Energy Systems, which is a technology and innovation center supporting energy companies and networks, industrial sites, and commercial businesses to navigate to net zero. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you, William, how you look into this topic of how energy poverty and poor health are interlinked. So the floor is yours, and you can start sharing your screen.
Thank you, Miriam. So yes, as Miriam says, I work. Oops, sorry, wrong presentation.
We don't see any presentation yet, so don't worry.
Okay.
We see you, which is great.
Right, just 2 secs. Is this coming up now?
Not yet for me.
Have you, if it comes to it, could you show it then? If
yeah,
it's on my
of course.
screen. You're not seeing this.
I don't see. I just see your camera. Actually.
Okay. Oh well. Sorry, I don't know why.
But don't worry. Then I will share it from my side, and you will just have to tell me. Oops. Sorry.
Okay. So
just wait just a second, because I will have to move to the first one. Can you see it?
Yes. Have you? Yep. That's fine. Sorry about that. So
no
yeah.
worries.
So I'm going to just talk about health and fuel poverty in UK. We use the term fuel poverty in the UK rather than energy poverty. But I first wanted to place energy poverty within the wider context of health inequalities. And this first slide shows that men in the least deprived areas of England can on average expect to enjoy nearly 10 more years of life than those in the most deprived areas. So I think that's quite stark in terms of difference. Next slide, please, Miriam. And this just, the COVID pandemic cruelly exploited these health inequalities. So this shows that death rates were twice as high in the most deprived areas of England than the least deprived areas, and reflects a general trend in death rates. Next slide, please. So the impact of cold housing on health inequalities is particularly stark, and that's very much our focus, tends to be our focus in the UK, is around cold and unaffordable fuel bills. And there is now firm evidence that among older people, cold housing is associated with increased strokes, heart attacks, respiratory diseases, and falls and injuries. And amongst children, it's associated with increased respiratory infections, asthma, and anxiety. But it also has insidious indirect effects. It means people have less money for food and other necessities, which results in poorer nutrition and weaker immune systems. And it gives rise to anxiety about paying fuel bills and often and increased mental health problems often as a result. It can also lead to people taking more time off work because of cold-related ill health. Next slide, please. But on a more positive note, next slide, please.
Yeah,
Miriam.
I'm trying to.
Okay, sorry. On a more positive note, there is now clear medical evidence that improving the energy efficiency standards of people's homes does result in positive health outcomes. And I've given 2 examples of in-depth systematic reviews into the health impacts of improved standards. Just, by give some background, Cochrane reviews, for example, only accept very robust evidence that meet very high quality standards of research. And so in summary, these show that improving energy efficiency standards of homes results in improvements in respiratory health and other chronic illnesses, more usable space in the home during cold weather due to improved heating, and perhaps not surprisingly, improved mental health and improved social relationships. And I think perhaps particularly significantly, given the extreme pressures our health services are currently facing, reduced use of health and emergency services. Next slide, please. So the benefits of improved energy efficiency and heating led the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, NICE, to produce a guideline on how to reduce the risk of death and ill health associated with living in cold homes. And this is very significant because NICE plays a central role in determining the delivery of health and social care services in England. In brief, its role is to improve health and well-being by examining the science and evidence of disease and ill health and using this to inform the delivery and decision-making in health and care. This diagram summarizes its recommendations to local health bodies and their partners about how they should tackle the ill health associated with cold homes. I won't go into detail, but evidence say that it's very much focused on how such organisations can work together to address the root causes, the socioeconomic determinants of cold-related ill health. Next slide, please. So I've just set out some examples of how the NICE guideline has been put into effect, and I've included hyperlinks so that you can find out more about each initiative at your leisure. But just to highlight 2 initiatives, the Welsh Government's NEST scheme now gives energy efficiency grants to people with respiratory, circulatory or mental health conditions. And my own organisation, Energy Systems Catapult, is running a pilot project with a local NHS provider in which the NHS pays the heating bills of people on low incomes with health conditions related to cold homes. So next slide, please. In conclusion, I think the evidence shows that cold homes and unaffordable fuel bills have a huge toll on people's physical and mental health. And the current massive rise in gas prices will make fuel poverty much worse, and is anticipated to give rise to a major public health emergency unless mitigating action is taken. So we're estimating fuel poverty figures going up to potentially 8 million by October. That's almost a third of households in Britain. It's estimated that the National Health Service, the NHS, already spends at least £1.4 billion per year treating the ill health resulting from cold homes and fuel poverty. And that was before the COVID pandemic and the recent rise in fuel prices. But there is strong evidence that taking action to improve cold homes could actually save money, save NHS money and money in other places, as well as, importantly, improve people's health. And that health organisations can play an important role in tackling fuel poverty. People trust frontline health workers and are particularly likely to act on their advice. And health workers will often know about patients' social and housing circumstances and can refer people with poor housing for help. They can also work with their partners and local area strategies to address the causes of health, such as poor housing. But I think essentially what we really need is ambitious national policy to address the wider determinants of ill health, and an ambitious programme to tackle poor housing, higher fuel prices and poor energy efficiency standards should play a central role in such a policy. Final slide, please. So I'll just finish with a quote from Michael Marmot, who is the UK's leading expert on health, understanding health inequalities. Thank you.
Wow, thanks a lot, William. Especially the last sentence quote will give us some food for thought. Thanks for exposing the really the socioeconomic divide that comes with energy poverty, or that, well, I mean, they influence each other, and also for showing some of the solutions, including the players who should come in the whole help chain, let's say. I really liked your diagram. I think we can still even extend it to some other measures and other stakeholders, I would think, because the topic is so cross-cutting that the health sector is certainly one of health and social sector is certainly key, but it might not be the only one, especially in cities when we think about the role of community members, for example, or neighborhoods. But we will discuss this later. So thanks for this this presentation and providing us with the wider context. I will now pass the floor to Vasilis, who will moderate the next part, where we will go even deeper now into the topic and look more into how we can get evidence actually on all those issues before even tackling it and finding solutions. So I will stop sharing my screen, and Vasilis, you can lead now.
Hi, Miriam. Thanks for the introduction, and the keynote speeches from the first two presenters are very much appreciated. Let's see if I can very quickly share my screen and have a very quick introduction of myself. I believe that now you can see my presentation. In very brief, I'm Vasilis Bulgarakis. I work as a communications manager in VI Labs. Last year, we were able to celebrate the 10th year anniversary of the company. We are mainly involved in Horizon 2020 projects, and I am part of this panel because I lead the work package 9 on Urbanom in regards to dissemination, communication, training, and exploitation. And I'm also working on the working group 5 of the dissemination, communication, and exploitation of the urban health cluster, in which Urbanom and Well-Based are members. And this is how today's synergy has been resulted. Very quickly about the Urbanom project. It comes from the Urban Observatory for Multi-Participatory Enhancement of Health and Well-Being. We are a research and innovation action. We will last for 4 years. And the main goal of the project is to promote urban health, well-being, and livability through a systematic integration of health concerns in urban policies. This is why we will try to have comprehensive evidence of environmental health determinants and their spatial distributions through the cities. This is why today's session is very relevant to us. And the end goal is to integrate those health concerns and the overall environmental stressors and the social inequalities in a policy framework to promote the transition of European cities to sustainable, climate-proof, low-carbon, and smart and inclusive urban economies. This is why we are very closely related to UN Sustainable Goals. And this is it from my side. I will now pass the floor to the speakers, to Mel Steven from Erasmus Medical School for her own presentation. Let me.
Yes, thank you very much. Also for the invitation to speak. I'm Merel Stevens. I work as a junior researcher at the Erasmus Medical Center, and I'm involved in our fantastic Well-Based project on energy poverty and health, together with Miriam, for example, and Rebecca as well, that's in the meeting, and Melda, who will speak later on the Turkish pilot of this project. So I will also share my presentation. I have some very visual slides for you to support my talk. And so I will talk a bit more on the design of the intervention in our project, and also how we are going to evaluate it and what kind of different data sources we need for this. And this is the social ecological model. I'm not sure if this is familiar to some of you, but the WellWish project, the intervention is set up according to this model, which is also called the rainbow model. And as you can see, the model actually maps the different determinants that are of influence to our health. So as you can see—
Meryl, sorry, can you just put it in big, because it's still it's not the presentation mode?
Wait, then I might need to do a new share, I think. Wait.
I mean, if it's complicated, leave it as it is. I was just thinking.
No, I think like this, it should be fine. Is it going forward as
Yeah,
well?
perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So so a human being possesses some key features such as your age and your sex, but your health is also influenced by your lifestyle, the social and community networks that surround you, your living and working conditions, and also the society you live in. And this model is actually very helpful in explaining how energy poverty leads to its health effects, because the underlying mechanisms that explain how energy poverty influences someone's health touch upon at least one of these layers of the model. So, for example, it is proven that people that live in cold homes have a higher risk of high blood pressure and respiratory diseases. And people that face financial stress, for example, which touches upon layer 1 and 4, have a higher risk of mental illness. So this is why we adopted this model in our project. And we have 6 pilot sites that are going to, or actually they have designed their urban intervention programs recently, and they did this according to this model. And I would like to show you some examples of elements of the intervention for each layer. So if we look at layer 1, it's the individual lifestyle. So here we want to decrease someone's energy consumption and the energy costs. So here an example of an intervention element could be debt support. So look carefully together with the person. So how can we support you in reducing your energy bills? And then for layer 2, it's social community networks. An example from the pilot in Valencia is that they will organize artistic collective creation with schools and communities to together in a creative way think of solutions to the problem and also strengthen the community networks. Then the 3rd layer, living and working conditions. This mainly involves improvements to the physical fabric of the housing that the people live in. And then the 4th layer, so the societal layer. This is an example that a citizen campaign for the right to energy will be organized to create awareness also among policymakers, politicians, that actually energy is a human right and it should be well taken into account in all policies. So like I've showed you, the intervention is designed according to this model, according to these 4 layers. And also a very important objective of our project is to evaluate this intervention and to see whether it actually leads to beneficial health effects, because that's, and also energy poverty indicators, because that's of course what we are aiming for. And what is important to say here is that when we design this intervention according to the layers, we also want to evaluate it according to this model. And I put up this graph not for you to understand how all these different determinants and factors lead to their health influences and how they influence on energy poverty again, but just to illustrate how complex this problem actually is and why it needs such a multidimensional approach and evaluation from also a very multidimensional perspective. So if we take the model into account again and we look at the determinants that are of influence for each layer, we can, for example, for layer 1, individual lifestyle, control over life is very important. So you can imagine when you live in energy poverty, you feel less, you feel like you have less control over your life, which can negatively impact your mental health. And if we look at social and community networks, social isolation is a very common problem that we see among people that live in energy poverty. And these two layers actually ask for more subjective monitoring. If you want to monitor such determinants and whether they change due to your intervention, you, for example, use questionnaires or interviews to gain information or data on this topic. And then for the third layer, living and housing conditions, of course, we want to see that, for example, due to the physical improvements to the housing, that the housing conditions actually improve. And how can we measure this? Well, then we need more objective monitoring. So, for example, we are going to monitor the air quality inside the homes of the people that we include in our study. So that's a more objective way of gathering data to evaluate the effect. And the fourth layer, the societal layer, extreme weather events and climate change can also be of influence to the problem of energy poverty. And if we want, of course, take this into account in the interpretation of our data and the evaluation of the intervention. And here we need more city level data on weather, for example, so we are able to take this into account. So as you can see, each layer of the model asks for a different approach, but it also allows us to integrate all these different data sources. And this is very helpful in evaluating the impact of our intervention that is also of a very multi-dimensional nature. And I think I can hear you thinking, how are you going to obtain all these different data from these rather vulnerable people? Sometimes they are very hard to reach. And this is of course, a very big challenge in a project like this, and something we are continuously working on to find ways and strategies to make it most effective. So this needs a very well thought of approach and also adaptation to each local situation, because we are dealing with very different local situations across Europe. But this is the common objective of our project, and at the same time, a very big challenge. And if we succeed, we will generate scientific evidence that can facilitate change for the people that live in energy poverty and actually need the benefits of the intervention that we design. So I think this is also an important point for the discussion, to talk about how to make sure to gather all these different data and evaluate such a project. So thank you for your attention, and I think I can give the word back to the moderator.
Thanks a lot, Meryl. Really condensed but concise presentation, and you give us an idea and some thoughts on the data collection. And if we have time, I would really like to hear your opinion on how WellBased is going to effectively collect data, because as you said, it's the most difficult process and the most challenging one to combine subjective measurements, objective measurements as well. And I was wondering how the citizens' engagement can be useful in well-based cases.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
If there anything in the pilots that involves citizens' co-creation of some evidence-based policies, then I'm sure that you will be able to have some efficient data collection. So if there is anybody else in the chat wondering about this thing, I think that we can proceed with Melda Kardemir, another well-based project partner. She's sustainability consultant for Edirne City Council. The floor is yours, Melda.
Thank you, Vasilis. Hello, everyone, again. I'm Melda from Demir Enerji Consulting, and I'm an environmental engineer and work as a sustainable consultant at Demir Enerji. The Well-Based projects, we are 3 partners from Turkey as public, private and association. And today I participate in this event on behalf of Edirne Municipality. And thank you very much for the invitation of dear Miriam and the team. And I'm sharing my screen for the presentation. I think it's okay. Today I'd like to briefly talk about our plans for the target group as Edirne pilot in Well-Based project and our previous experiences as Edirne Municipality. First of all, the aim of the Well-Based project is to design, implement, and evaluate a comprehensive urban program to reduce energy poverty and its effects on citizens' health and well-being based on evidence-based approach, easily adaptable and transferable to different European realities. For this aim, each pilot defines their own urban program and details their work in action steps. There are 19 partners in Well-Based project, including experienced partners, specialists in different fields. And there are 7 pilots in the project and total budget over 5 million euros. And the project has been ongoing since March last year, and the total project duration is 4 years. And in the figure, you can see the distribution of the pilot cities and partners on the map. To give general information about Edirne city, and city is located in the westernmost part of Turkey in the Thrace region, and it's bordered by Bulgaria and Greece. And the population of Edirne city is over 400,000 people. And the central district of Edirne, the pilot city of the Well-Based project, where the majority of Roma people are, has a population of 86,000 nearly in 2021. And Edirne also stands out with its cultural identity. In the figure, this Selimiye Mosque in Edirne, which was the capital of the Ottoman Empire before Istanbul, and was included in the UNESCO World Heritage List in 2011. The socioeconomic development level of Edirne is in the 21st rank among 81 cities of Turkey. Its economy is largely depends on agriculture, but there are also factory establishments. A significant part of the energy neighborhoods are located in Edirne Central District. And Edirne Municipality mentions the goal of developing sustainable livelihoods in Roma neighborhoods in its 2020, between 2020 and 2024 strategic plan. It's the first municipality to set the targets in its strategic plan for Roma neighborhoods. And Edirne has been providing aid to households that have been struggling economically for many years. It also carries out different projects towards this goal, such as Romected. Romected is a joint program run by the European Union and the Council of Europe with the aim of empowering Roma at local level and promoting good governance. Activities are designed to increase the participation of Roma citizens in the design, implementation, and monitoring of these policies and projects, while helping local governments to integrate Roma-specific dimensions, measures into key local policies and budget and public services on their agendas. Edirne municipality, which works with various associations working especially with Roma neighborhoods, carries out important studies in the region. Among the people living in Edirne, which is very cold in winter, the houses of those in need are repaired and aids such as food and clothing are provided. Energy poverty in Turkey is calculated based on the definition resting is itself on share of household spending. Accordingly, if a household spends more than 10% of their income on energy to heat up sufficiently, it's energy poor. An article published in 2017 states that nearly a quarter of households in Turkey are energy poor, and nearly half of the lowest income households are at risk of energy poverty. It states that approximately 72% have no natural gas and 63% have no floor heaters, 11% have no hot water, and nearly 10% have no toilets. And we can roughly divide the neighborhoods experiencing energy poverty in Edirne into three groups as follows. 3 neighborhoods, approximately 13,000 people, are a good portion of households have regular income and habitat conditions are fair. And 6,000 people are medium level households, have irregular income, and earnings mostly depend on scrap collecting, stick cleaning jobs, and habitat conditions are decrepit. And about 6,000 people are bad conditions. They have materially deprived, very poor health and well-being indicators. Many social problems, school attendance very low, domestic violence widespread, and high debt levels and dependence on in-kind state aid for subsistence. And habitat conditions are dilapidated and ramshackle homes. And in the figure, you can see images about the houses and residents in these neighborhoods. Thanks to well-based projects, improvements works can be carried out for the people in Edirne who are experiencing energy poverty. I can say that we are happy to take part in this project. With the project, a recruitment strategy was created to determine the people who will take part in the project first. An informed consent form was prepared to enable people in energy-poor neighborhoods to participate in intervention and control group. With the approval of the ethics committee, we will accurate the process and carry out measurements to determine the urban welfare in the intervention group. The health levels of people living in predominantly Roma neighborhoods and the situation in their homes will be measured. Here, data collection process will be carried out with the surveys and measuring instruments. We get this part of medical doctors and health workers, as well as university lecturers and other fields to carry out necessary studies in Edirne regarding data collection. In this regard, we are proceeding in line with guidance of them and the well-based projects work package leaders. We have not started work on the field yet, but we have determined our actions for the applications improvements. Here we have actions such as training, home improvements, and policy recommendations. Once the data collection is complete, we aim to process the data into the online well-based database and interpret the results. Afterwards, policy outputs and dissemination studies will continue to expand these practices in other cities, similar to do pilot cities in the proposal for the Roma can make the people living here agreed. Being aware of this, the municipality has stated that it will contribute from its own municipality budget where necessary. Here, to its advantage for the municipality to ensure the trust of the people and to ensure that the promises made are fulfilled. In this regard, it's possible to say that the Edirne municipality has shown the necessary self-sacrifice. And for my presentation, the first thing to do in the fight against energy poverty is to determine the size of poverty and to work collectively, I think. And in order to determine the magnitude of energy poverty, it's important to make realistic measurements for the people and their homes. And thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, Melda, for your presentation and showcasing the Edirne's pilot case for the well-based project. It really reflects what has been also suggested by William and Miriam and Finn in the chat about how these vulnerable populations can and should be engaged with the projects and how they should learn how they can be benefited, and this can work as prompting them to get their voices heard. Thanks a lot to you, and thanks a lot to Meryl as well for presenting well-based contributions in regards to measuring energy poverty and health determinants. If there's no further suggestions or any questions to the presenters about this session, I believe that we are good to continue on with the third session for today.
Okay. Yeah. So the third session includes here me. First of all, I'm Jyoti Pisave. I am from Italy, EU's, just representing a university school for advanced studies, which is in Korea, Italy. I represent Urbanum project. My colleague Vasilis has already given all the information, the introduction about the Urbanum. So I think I will skip this part for the time being, and I will move to the next sessions. So I'm having a me as a representative of Urbanum, I'm having a responsibility for the World Package 4, which is to collect and analyze the data for exposure and health impact assessment as well. So following the two sessions which we have, we can see how all the problems, the data, the policy problems, everything contributes to the health injustice in our cities. So this session is completely focused on how to alleviate these health injustices by using, what are the solutions? So I strongly believe sometimes that the complex problem should have a complex solution as well, because it has we need to tackle this problem from all the sectors combined together. So for example, maybe we can see something like how we can bridge the different areas in governance. So this can be one part of the dimension which we can solve the health injustice. Second, the most important, I think, is the how to co-design these solutions with communities. The third one is what the cities are doing actually, what are their plans. And the last one, I think, how these efforts can be extended across let's say the region or nation. So in order to discuss all these problems, I invite 4 speakers, and I will invite them one by one, introducing them. There is a housekeeping rules which we have already discussed before, but just one point to add that all the speakers, we have these sessions will be completely a talk, will not be a presentation slides, so just a talk. I request to the speakers to limit their talk for maybe 5 minutes or maximum 6 minutes. So first, I would like to say to call on Professor Anna Jensen from Aarhus University. She has an extensive experience in to be a part of solution. So Anna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just try to share my screen. I don't seem to be able to.
Or maybe you can just, like a talk.
Okay, then I'll just talk. Yes, and I will talk to you about how energy poverty and health is positioned within urban politics and policies, urban governance at local level. And I'm Anna Jensen from Aarhus University. I have a background in political science and sociology, and I work on the Urbanum project, where I'm the lead of Work Package 7 on governance. And as you've been introduced to Urbanum before, I won't say any more about that. So for the urban politics, energy and health are 2 distinct areas. They're very distinct topics, but they're also situated in a context where a whole wide range and myriad of local priorities compete about attention on the political agenda. And so this is at local level. Then at the same time, the urban politics of energy and energy poverty and health is also positioned between national level and European level politics and the local level policy intervention and politics. It involves public and private actors, both in the policy making and implementation, and they are very high cost areas when you think in a long-term perspective with investments and interactions. And furthermore, looking at energy politics and health politics in the perspective of energy poverty, it also involves social issues, as social inequality is very much positioned within the social policy area. Then for urban energy policy, this covers both climate mitigation and post-carbon transitions, but just as well, it also covers energy supply and the distribution of energy across the city. So cities, they encourage and take advantage of local engagement, because these investments and these to make it more post-carbon energy supply and make it more energy efficient, you need the engagement of local and urban policymakers, stakeholders, of citizens and businesses, because not only for the financial cost, but also to make these transitions manifest themselves in the housing areas and in the built environment. And this is, for example, with initiatives such as energy communities, which is based on the new energy directive, which, for example, in the city of Copenhagen, it's linked to socially deprived areas where the city invests funding in rising the quality of living and the social standards of the area. At the same time, as it supports the transition to low carbon energy and energy efficiency. Or in West Suffolk in England, where it's linked to sustainable business area development. Then for health policy, then health and exposure to health risk, such as air pollution, for example, or cold housing, it's very socioeconomically loop-sided. So, and this has meant that there's been an increased focus on health inequality and the individual in relation to health behavior, health affecting behavior. And this has trickled down or is trickling down from the national level and international level to the local governments and policymaking in cities. And here this makes a focus on vulnerable groups highly apt, and these often also are very marginalized and low groups of citizens with low socioeconomic status and low social capital. And this part about having low socioeconomic status and low social capital also means that they have less capacity for changing behavior or mitigating risks in their environments. So this means that there is also an increasing focus on social and cultural factors in the city, but also within specific areas or groups of citizens in the city. It's a lifestyle perspective, what you experience in your childhood. Very often you bring into adulthood, like a social inheritance when it comes to health. And this has very, very wide welfare effects, both for the individual, the opportunities they have, but also at the urban scale. And it has high financial costs. And this means that the city has a number of distinct challenges concerning energy poverty and health inequality. These are rising topics, but they are still very distinct areas that are very often disconnected, and they face massive challenges with integrating health inequality priorities and issues and objectives, energy poverty objectives and issues, and social policy objectives, and integrating these across not only these three areas, but also other relevant areas such as schooling. And it requires a high engagement of citizens and communities and stakeholders, which is crucial, learnings from other cities, and then integration of a time perspective that also covers unanticipated events such as the crisis now with the Ukrainian war, the pandemic, or the economic crisis. Thank you very much. I think that was 6 minutes.
That's Perfect, on time, Anna. Thank you very much. Indeed, you have really highlighted the best solution, which is, we say, the political will. Without it, I don't think it will be useful to to the solutions part of time. So then I welcome the next speaker, Morten Ross Madsen. He's the CEO of an at Architect Office at Bispectrum, if I'm not pronouncing it wrong, sorry for that, in an urban design and innovation. He will be sharing his thoughts on co-design, planning, and technical innovations. So Morten, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I will be talking about a specific project that we're doing in Copenhagen, in Gladsaxe, more specific. First of all, introduction. As you say, I'm owner of a Bispectrum, a small office in Copenhagen, working with architecture and urban planning and urban innovation. I'm as well a supporting partner in the EU Polis project, a Horizon 2020 supported project, with the aim of increasing health and well-being in cities based on nature-based solutions. So my talk will be introduce our work to bridge different areas of governance and how we try to build a local initiative in a challenged neighborhood. So first of all, issues of bridging different areas of governance. The site of the EU Polis is in a socially challenged neighborhood, Mørkhøj in Gladsaxe, a suburban municipality in the outskirts of Copenhagen. It's a settlement of 200 residents and an area recognized by a lack of socialization and common activities in the community, health issues among the residents, and a feeling among many residents being insecure when being out by night. In the EU Polis project, we'll develop and construct a new green outdoor facility in close collaboration with the social department of the municipality. So we are going to monitor and work with this green area that will be based on nature-based solutions that are able to enhance physical health and well-being for the residents. But another interesting agenda is on display in Gladsaxe. A new regulative forces landowners to separate their sewer system. So having to separate surface water in a separate system to meet the environmental political agenda of the municipality. And this situation encourages the landowners economically to do local investment and finding ways to treat the surface water local instead of sending the water to the common sewer system. So the EU Polis project in Gladsaxe builds on top of the DAMP project, which is a technological project developing a new ways to handle rainwater local by evaporation. And in other words, then the EU Polis project aimed to bridge the two agendas by developing nature-based solutions designed to improve health and well-being. And at the same time, it's a solution that can relieve the sewer system and handle rainwater local. To make the best solution and project have bridged the environmental department and the housing association, the utility service company, and the social department in a close process to develop nature-based solutions to solve common multifunctional agenda. Then our work to eradicating injustice in our community. We base our planning on a EU Polis planning tool, goal-driven planning matrix, Our work is based on a thorough understanding of the site and its potential and its problems, based on close dialogue with stakeholders of the site. And our social understanding of the site is based on mapping through questionnaires and workshops with stakeholders and supported by a presence strategy. And this presence strategy has roots in Gladsaxe Municipality's citizen strategy. Its guiding principle of this strategy is based on the individual citizen. Listen and focus on the citizen and help irrigating their initiative and their resources. So this work is followed up by a network of social innovators who are present in the streets in Gladsaxe and in the challenged neighborhoods of the city. So together with the local innovators of the neighborhood of the site, we have developed a co-designing strategy. So we have worked on implementing the residents in the design process of the outdoor facilities, and we are finding a local resource among the residents as a foundation for further involvement in the project. So the aim has been to test different ways of approaching the residents, and we look for the best ways to obtain most possible participation and to build up residents' opinion and opinion making and their co-ownership. So last, I talk a few words on how we meet the design solutions with communities. Last summer, we based our work on creating common kitchen gardens and starting a culture of hopefully a future tradition of growing individual gardens and celebrating the outcome together. A garden that later can become an integrated part of the nature-based solutions that are being implemented next year. So during the winter, we have tested the potential of having a staffed mobile office at the plot as a communication platform to create dialogue and involvement between the residents and the planning of the future green outdoor areas based on nature-based solutions. So this wagon has basically been manned by me as an architect and planners from
Sorry, Martin, it's in 6 minutes. Can you wrap up the...
I'm wrapping up very fast. So the status of the project is that we have created a sketch project that must be approved by the residents, a general assembly in April, and then the construction will start next year in 23 and finish by summer 23. Yeah, good. And then we'll start the monitoring after that for 1 year.
Oh. Thank you very much, Martin. It's really nice to see your solutions. I really second with you about the developing the nature-based solutions, which is really useful for sustainable point of view as well. So without wasting time, I will move to the next speaker, which is Fien van der Peking, if I'm not pronouncing it wrong, sorry, from city of Eeklo, Belgium. Fien is working on a pilot project battling energy poverty and including vulnerable households in the energy transition in the city of Eeklo, Belgium. She will share her thoughts on including the non-middle class perspective in the policy making. Fien, you have, like I said, 6 minutes to share your thoughts. So the floor is yours. Meanwhile, I see there are no questions in the chat. So I will move to the next session. Thank you, Fien, floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, today I will share some ideas and challenges as well. We hope to overcome in our Horizon 2020 project Power Up. As a pilot city in Eeklo, we want to establish a fund, a financial fund fueled by the incomes of an investment of the city in a cooperative wind turbine. In this way, like any investment, we buy a part of the wind turbine, which will generate profit for the coming 20 years, which we will reinvest in implementing schemes and measures to lower the energy bills and energy consumption of local vulnerable households in a sustainable way. Because as Anna previously mentioned, implementing measures to battle energy poverty are a costly thing. So by investing in sustainable energy and reusing those profits to implement measures, we become more independent as a city from subsidies and project subsidies on national and European level. We also heard in the previous talks that energy poverty is a very complex problem that touches upon almost every aspect of life. Apart from health consequences and the financial issue itself, vulnerable people face other factors that limit the ability to improve their social and personal situation. One of them is, for example, the lack of freedom of choice. For example, if you enroll in a social housing scheme, you cannot choose where to live. You're allocated a certain home. That's your home for the coming years or the rest of your life. You don't have a choice. If you're in energy debt, the fact in Belgium is that you don't have the choice to choose your energy supplier. You get allocated to one of the most expensive ones, serving as a social supplier, and forcing you in a system of prepaid energy. I myself are a product of middle-class parents, which also means that I can read about the perspective of vulnerable people. I can read the research, but I will never really personally be able to fully grasp the impact of energy poverty on someone's life. And I noticed that for a lot of policymakers, unfortunately, that's the same situation. For example, I give the example in Belgium. If you look at housing installation, we work with a subsidy system, which is higher for vulnerable people. But still, you need to make an investment upfront, which results in situations where benefits and subsidies go actually to the persons who already had the financial means to invest, leaving vulnerable people behind with their high cost, poor living situations, and also possibly bad health conditions. In regards to that, policy initiatives should be focusing on not only the financial limitations people are facing, but also on all those other aspects of life. And in reality, this means that good policy making for vulnerable people is more framed towards increasing living comfort, decreasing monthly costs, than promoting sustainability issues as such. One example from Flanders is that Flanders will subsidize dryers, energy efficient dryers for vulnerable people. From a middle class perspective, we often see a dryer as a bit of a redundant household appliance, which consumes a lot of energy. So it's best to not use it at all. But imagine living in a damp, overcrowded apartment, for example. Then you have two choices. Either you dry your laundry inside of your apartment, which even increases the health risks and makes it even more unhealthy indoor air quality, or you buy a second-hand dryer, which leave you with high energy bills. And that's why Flanders, after recommendations from poverty organizations, decided for this target group to subsidize dryers. And in our project, we encounter similar struggles or challenges. We look at the problem from our own limited perspective. For example, we want to lend out shares from an energy community to make green and foremost cheap energy available to vulnerable households. And probably their savings on their energy bill in 1 year will be higher than the price of a share itself. So for us, in the beginning, it looked like a one-on-one solution. You save money, you reinvest it either in the share itself or in other energy saving measures. But I think today it became very clear that it's a complex problem. You cannot force people to do it one-on-one. Probably they have other debts, or they want to improve on other areas in their life. For example, if your children need new clothing, maybe that's a priority over buying a share from a cooperative. We also assume that offering a share...
Sorry, Finn, it's time to wrap. I have a few seconds to wrap, please. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Maybe just on how we try to overcome this perspective, we will work with a trained expert by experience who will guide us and who will defend the perspective of the vulnerable people along the design of each intervention. And it's for us, co-design is being aware of our own limited framework and enlarging our view by working together as closely as we can with the target group, not to ask them what the best solution is, but to tailor solutions to their actual needs and their complex situation.
Thanks, Finn, for your wonderful talk. I mean, you really highlighted the usefulness of and the most important aspect of the perspective in policies, where it highlights that we need to include these perspectives while making the policies. So thank you. I see there are no questions asked. However, I do have some questions, but I'm planning to ask at the end of the session. So to summarize everything, so this brings us to our last speaker. His name is Professor Richard Lang. He's from Robert Gordon University, Aberdeen. Richard has been undertaking research concerning sustainable urban environments and their connections with society, culture, and heritage for over 20 years. So he will be sharing his thoughts on cities, co-design, planning, and built environment. Professor Richard, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Joydeep. I'll try to be as brief as I can because I'm aware that we're running out of time. I mean, one of the dangers of going last is that everybody has already said everything that I was planning to say, but I'll say it anyway. I think within the Urbanome project, what is becoming clear is that a lot of the issues that we're dealing with are actually very complex in terms of not just the kind of academic discipline areas that might be required to deal with issues of well-being, energy, and health, but also the complexity of the problems that we're dealing with. It's very difficult to isolate any particular intervention, which is how we're looking at things in Urbanome. It's difficult to isolate the extent to which it is going to affect people's mental health, people's physical health, but also how it connects with a number of the things that I would say in particular, some of the issues that Finn was just mentioning a moment ago. Within Scotland, certainly there has been recognition under our current coalition government that there was a need for environmental reasons to encourage people to use public transport. So we now have a situation that anybody who is under 22, as well as older people and people with disabilities in Scotland, can use bus transport for free. So this means that just over 40% of the population do not need to pay for bus-related public transport. Now, that was a policy that was put through on largely environmental grounds to try to encourage people to stop using their own cars and so on. In the city that I live in, Aberdeen, which is an oil capital, there is a huge disparity in wealth across the city. We have some streets in Aberdeen that contain a higher density of millionaires than anywhere else in the UK. But within a mile of that, we have areas of not the kind of extreme deprivation that we maybe see in parts of Glasgow, but there is a great disparity, and there are large parts of the city where people simply don't have money to do things like buy a car. So large amounts of people's personal income were being spent on public transport. In the last while, we have also encountered a very strange issue in Aberdeen, which is that as there has been an incredibly rapid increase in the price of energy, that parts of the oil industry are actually benefiting from that quite significantly. But this doesn't change the fact that in terms of the buildings that we live in and in terms of the transport that we use, that we are currently going through a process of energy shock, really. And I feel that some of the issues that myself and my colleagues have been looking at for many years, like trying to design new buildings that require no heating systems, for example, or adhere to originally the Scandinavian concepts of passive house. A lot of our efforts are actually looking at existing buildings. And again, this connects with some of the points that Fian was making about if you live in a building which has no or very little insulation, maybe has an inefficient heating system, if your transport is costing you a lot of money, then all of these things are going to have a really significant effect on your physical health, but they're also going to have a very significant effect on your mental health. So some of the things that we're looking at within Urbanome are interesting in the sense that we're trying to look at things like shared public space, democratic access to the likes of cycling and public transport, and improvements of access to green space within the middle of the urban living labs that we are using. And I feel that we embarked on the project as a project about urban health, but it is now starting to see genuinely important connections with other things that are happening internationally in terms of energy. So the issue of fuel poverty maybe felt like something that was affecting disenfranchised or much poorer parts of our communities, but these are now issues that are either already or are about to affect almost everybody in society. So I think the issues that have been spoken about this morning are incredibly important. I did have a nice little video of a wood burning stove, but I won't share it with you this morning after all. So I think I'll just wind up there though, Jaideep, and then because I'm aware that we're at the end of the session. So thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Richard. It's really useful, and like you have correctly pointed out, even exactly what I was telling before, the complex problems needs the complex solutions. So indeed, you have said the problem has a many phases. So yeah, that's good. I do have one question, however. I am having a lot of questions, but just want to be quick. Because we are already running out of time. So first of all, I would like to thank all the speakers. They've done really thought-provoking ideas and solutions. It's really good to hear from them. I have a lot of questions, but I will just stick to one, and any one speaker can answer from them. It's not a problem. So I'm literally worried when someone goes with the co-design approach. My problem is the sustainability problem. I mean, if you train the community, and once the project is over, the community tends to forget or not to continue that effort. So how to build? I mean, it's sort of an ownership. So any strategy so that the community can own literally, so that they can continue. Anyone can answer. Maybe Richard. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Jaideep. I mean I did have slides, and like my final slide was an image illustrating co-design. And actually, although Anna mentioned that her university is leading parts of our project looking at governance, Aarhus and RGU and European Network of Living Labs also have quite a heavy emphasis on co-design within our project. So our starting point was to work on the basis that interventions would be co-designed with the people who might actually use them. So it was important to kind of make sure that the things that we are going to be studying for the next 2.5 to 3 years are things that people actually regard as initiatives that might make their lives better. That's a kind of glib answer, because I think sometimes local authorities would say that they engage in co-design, but I suspect that they engage in just consulting the public. And I think that actually trying to design interventions with people that might end up using them may help in that respect. Others may have different opinions, of course. I'm a bit of a co-design evangelist some of the time, but I'm not aware that it doesn't always work,
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Thanks for sharing your answer, Richard. Just to sum up everything in just one point, I would really say that we need to really focus on supporting the local efforts through leadership, overarching policies, and through local, state, and national strategies. This is what I think, if we do this, we will be able to solve the elevating health injustice in our cities. I think this is again abroad. So thank you very much for your talk. And yeah, Miriam, I pass it to you.
Yes, thanks everybody. Well, I think we get to the end. I just saw that Anna had raised her hand, so maybe just for the final word, it's over to you, Anne, and then we will wrap up because we will close even because we're already 5 minutes beyond our initial schedule. Anna, what did you want to comment?
I will make it very quick then. It's just to emphasize how important it is that we tailor the solutions to the specific groups of citizens, to the specific topics, and especially to the city this is in. And this is also why it's so important with the urban living labs, like Richard was talking about, and that we understand the people who are subject to energy poverty and health inequality in a wider sense than just as somebody who can't stop smoking or who can't find out how to get a better heating system or something, and then engage with them fully, not just on paper. And this requires targeted solutions, handmade solutions. Thank you.
Fantastic. And I think you really made the point. We need to take energy poverty really as a structural problem and make sure that it's kind of being taken into account even in all institutional decisions so that all those inequalities disappear. Not only for short term, but really on the longer run. And actually the other day I talked with someone from Barcelona who told me that Barcelona has the aim of getting to 0% energy poverty by 2030, which I thought was an amazing figure and a really high ambition. And I so much hope that they will get there and that other cities will follow. So thanks to all for your talks and for the ideas that you've shared. I'm really sorry that we didn't have more time to really discuss more freely. I think the topic would be worth it, but we will certainly organize other sessions like this, maybe even with more space to chat. But thanks to all the speakers, to my co-moderators and helpers in the background. And yeah, I hope we see each other again around this topic and that we can all find solutions and contribute to it. Thanks a lot and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you, Jaideep. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.